Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the Gospel of Matthew today. We're going to finish chapter 25. This is the end of the apocalyptic sermon, the eschatological sermon that Jesus delivers in chapters 24 and 25, the last sermon that he delivers in the Gospel of Matthew, and it ends with a judgment scene. And we've just learned from previous two parables that Jesus has told us that we have to be prepared. And being prepared means being able to give an answer for how we use the gifts, the resources, the blessings that God has invested in us. And that is going to be the standard applied at judgment. So, it's a lot to learn from this passage. Jesus tells us some key things about judgment that we really need to know. So let's read this passage. I'm going to begin reading with verse 31 and read through the end of the chapter. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to drink. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brothers of mine, even the least of them, you did it for me." Then he will also say to those on his left, "Depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they themselves will answer, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, saying, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it for me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. When I was little and first really paying attention to sermons, and I heard this passage read and preached about, to me, the most important feature of the story was that the separation was going to be right and left. And I had to continually remind myself, this is Jesus' right, not my right. So that on Judgment Day, as I'm looking at Jesus on his throne, I would know exactly what group I was in. It would be the group to my left, but the group to Jesus's right. Well, this is about how you know, but not in that way. There are some very important things about judgment. The first is judgment is going to take place and there's going to be a separation. In Jewish apocalyptic literature, which is contemporary with Jesus, say, give or take a century or two on either side of Jesus' life on earth. In Jewish apocalyptic literature, the judgment is often described as a great separation, and even the sorting out, like between sheep and goats. But it's between Israel and the nations, and Israel is brought into eternal glory, and the nations are judged and destroyed. Jesus is presenting us the same scenario, and even the nations being sorted out. But the great sorting isn't between nation and nation, but it's between the just and the unjust. And the sorting takes place based upon the way we have kept the second great command, to love our neighbors as ourselves. That's the first enormous lesson we need to learn. We sing a song in preschool chapel called "Jesus is the Friend Next to You." And I used that song to teach this lesson, that Jesus said the way we treat each other is the way we treat him. Whenever we help somebody, we help Jesus. Whenever we say something kind to somebody, we say something kind to Jesus. And whenever we're nasty to somebody, we're nasty to Jesus. And it's that simple. That's what Jesus is saying. You cannot keep the first great command unless you keep the second great command. In keeping the second great command, you do keep the first great command. And that's how you're going to be judged. Another thing that we need to know and remember, another feature of this, look at what he says. It's like he's saying the same thing to both people, but only the reverse. That one with one is you did, and with the other is did not. But there's another key difference in what he says to them. The king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you before the foundation of the world." Before God said, "Let there be light," God had already made our place in heaven for us. God's plan was always to bring us home to heaven. He knew how things were going to turn out. Before he said, "Let there be light," God, who is omniscient, God is omnipotent, God who is omnipresent, God who does not exist in past, present, or future, God who just is, knew exactly how everything was going to happen. And he created the world for us anyway, created us to live in it anyway, knowing that his son, that he himself would have to die for us to bring us home, and that only a few of us would want to even come home. And he did it anyway. Before God ever said, "Let there be light," heaven was ready for us. It's where we belong. But before he talks to them, to those who are lost, he says to those on his left, "Depart from me, accursed ones, into the eternal fire," verse 41, "which has been prepared for the devil and his angels. I did not make hell for you. I never intended that any of you would ever exist in hell. I made heaven for you. I didn't make hell for you. I made hell for the devil and his angels. And if you go there, it will be because you've chosen to, because it was never my intention that any of you would be there. And that's why I've given you every resource. I've let you know that I love you. I have shown you the way home. I have offered to walk with you all the way even to the end of the age. And I've given you everything you need. And therefore, if you choose the broad path that leads to destruction, it will be because you have chosen it. Well, that's the best invitation anyone could ever offer at the end of a sermon. And we will let it stand as a challenge to us this day. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.